Like the best animated movies, especially those aimed at kids first and foremost, The Wild Robot, directed by Chris Sanders of Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon fame, works on more than one level. On the surface, it's a zany, chaotic story about a robot learning how to live with the animals on an uninhabited island, but underneath it says a little something about the world we live in. It's not surprising this, as The Wild Robot is based on a book of the same name by award-winning American author Peter Brown, and I suspect how much you like the movie, especially as an adult, will depend on how many of these more thoughtful themes you pick up on while watching. The Wild Robot then tells the story of Roz, voiced by Lupita Nyong'o, an all-purpose robot created by the megacorp Universal Dynamics, whose delivery plane is downed by a storm near an uninhabited island. Roz, the only survivor, sets about offering her services to the animals on the island, only to be rebuffed. Deciding to request her makers pick her up instead, she's on the way to send out the signal when she accidentally crushes a goose nest, leaving only a single egg. With a task at last, defending the egg from the hungry fox Fink, voiced by Pedro Pascal, Roz is surprised when the goose, later named Brightbill, voiced by Kit Connor, imprints itself on her. Making peace with Fink, the pair do their best to raise Brightbill, ready for his migration from the island. But when Universal Dynamics eventually find out the location of the downed plane, they send out units to bring Roz back. But will she go with them? And if not, will the animals on the island survive the attack? The cast of The Wild Robot is a decent mix of old and new. The biggest star, Pedro Pascal, does a reasonable job as Fink the Fox, playing a comic role mixed with mentor. Nothing he does particularly stands out in the way, say, that Brian Tyree Henry did in the recent Transformers 1, but there's nothing ear-grating either. The lead, Lupita Nyong'o as Roz, is much the same. It's hard to make your voice stand out when you're playing a robot as straight as this one is, but the few moments she needs to emote, she gets it right. Of the rest, Matt Berry has some funny lines as an uptight beaver and delivers them as well as he delivers everything he does. The only real weak point in the voice cast is Bill Nighy, who plays the leader of the geese. If ever an actor sounded like he was phoning it in, it's Nighy in The Wild Robot. Where the film shines, though, is in its animation. No surprise, as this is the latest film from DreamWorks, the only Western studio to have given Pixar a run for their money over the last 30 years. The style here is particularly nice, adopting an almost sketch-like painterly look that hints back at the story's origins as a book. It's somewhat similar to Disney's Wish last year, but done better here, a little rougher, more textured. It feels like an illustration from a toddler's picture book come to life. There's so much detail in every frame, each of which is carefully composed with colour theory on show. It's just gorgeous to look at, and anyone with an eye for artwork or the natural world with all its flowers, waterfalls and grottos is going to love it. Another area where the film shines is in its humour. That zany, chaotic surface storyline I mentioned at the start is populated with a dozen likeable animals, each of which gets their chance to make a joke or two. Most of them land as well. The action scenes bookending the film are thrilling and clear, and don't come at the expense of character arcs and journeys. Kids are going to love watching The Wild Robot for all this energy and silliness. But The Wild Robot does do a little more than that. You see, the film, while never going too deep, certainly flirts with a lot of deeper themes. There's finding your own way in life, even if that means being unlike others, kindness versus selfishness, and the one that I consider the central theme of the film, nature versus man. There's a line towards the end where a character says, "Sometimes, to survive, we must become more than we are programmed to be." And this captures what The Wild Robot is trying to say well. Nature, like that surface stories the kids will love, is zany and chaotic. The animals fight, bounce off each other, but in the end they find an equilibrium. The works of man, on the other hand, are locked in, programmed like the robots, and the damage they do when they enter the film is clear. The script that communicates all this is a little bit muddled, but the general sense of the argument shines through, and it gives adults something more to think about than just the flashy animation. I've been pretty positive on this one so far, but there are a few wrinkles in the film. It definitely takes longer than it should to get into the main story, and wastes a bit too much time with Roz wandering the island at the start, not really advancing things. Relationships that become important towards the second half of the film aren't built carefully enough in the first half, so that some early emotional moments don't really feel earned, and you find yourself wondering, am I supposed to care about this? In fact, you can tell that the movie was based on a book generally, as the story doesn't flow as well as a script written straight for a movie would. It's disjointed at times, lurching from this to that. But none of it's horrible, and at least it's less predictable than something formulaic. But most of what I've mentioned here are problems with the script, small enough not to derail what works in The Wild Robot. Ultimately, as mentioned, a good animation movie will both entertain kids and provoke some thoughts in adults. I think DreamWorks' latest, The Wild Robot, does just about enough to tick these two boxes. And because of that, it hangs with the likes of WALL-E, Toy Story, Finding Nemo and more in Pixar's list. Anyway, nothing more to say. This is Movie Mavericks signing out.